Welcome to Chair Shots to the Cranium Interviews. This is Stephen Goforth. It is my absolute honor and pleasure to have as my guest today one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time and a WWE Hall of Famer. Please welcome Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Ricky, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview with me.
You know, Stephen, I'm happy to do these interviews, but with Chair Shots to the Cranium, the name of your show, I could not do it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Well, first off, how are you doing these days? How much of your time is still occupied by professional wrestling?
Physically, a few years ago, about 6 years ago, I had back surgery. I had I think at that time it was about a 22-year injury. I had a disc that finally ruptured, so I got a couple of screws and a couple of little rods back there. But you know, it's one of those type of surgeries, one of the newer ways of with a 1-inch incision. And after I had surgery, I actually walked out of the hospital. You know.
Oh wow.
So, it's pretty advanced, and that's doing well. Although in this coming up in July, I'm going in to have a full hip replacement, and it's nothing that I never suffered any injuries in my hip. My hips and my knees were always real good, and my doctor told me this is just arthritis, but what I did in the ring did not help it much either. So, and this is also a new way of a new style of doing hips. They say they're a lot easier than doing knees and shoulders. So once again, he said, when I'm done, I'll walk out. I'll walk out with a cane, but and I should be down for about 3 weeks and then back up, going strong again. So I'm taking the whole month of July off. So you're getting back to your question about how involved am I? Well, I'm either doing appearances, working with Tony Hunter, to which I'm still employed with the WWE, and they let me freelance. So I'll do personal appearances, such as the one coming up this Saturday in Marietta at the Cobb County. But other than that, still be employed with World Wrestling Entertainment. I'm more like a ambassador spokesperson. They do a lot of charity work, and whenever there's a convention or anything to do with some of the charities that they work with, and they need somebody to represent the company, they send me along. So I keep pretty busy, probably 3 weekends out of a month. I try to have a weekend off, and so I'm staying pretty busy, but the gigs are easy to do appearances and sign autographs and take pictures, and every now and then I'll be a special guest type enforcer or referee. I don't work anymore in the ring. I don't want to chance it because I think about 7 years ago I got slammed down real hard in the ring and ended up with a brain bleed, an aneurysm.
Mm.
So they're telling me that the old noggin has suffered enough, and with the injury that I had, there was a 60% fatality rate, and but I was able to pull through as we're talking today, and God has made sure that I do other things to help other people and pass things on. So I don't work in the ring as much as my heart really wants to, and I've been pretty physically active up until that point when I had that bleed. But I'll do a referee spot or something like that. But I like doing it because it keeps me in tune with the fans and keeps me in the ring. Even though it's just a role as a referee, but sort of it's the best that I can do right now. But it keeps me in touch.
Well, like you said earlier, you're scheduled to appear at the Universal Championship Wrestling show called Memorial Mayhem on May the 26th in Marietta, Georgia at the Cobb County Civic Center. This is going to be a great show. I'm very much looking forward to it. So tell the fans about your involvement or role with this show.
Well, pretty much what I've been doing is that prior to the show, there'll be some meet and greets and being able to talk with fans and take some pictures and sign some autographs. Sometimes when I get to the show, they'll ask me if the position is open for a referee spot in maybe one of their main event matches. As of Steven, as of this show coming up, I'm not quite sure if that spot is there for me.
Well, I tell you, we're looking forward to it. No matter what your role is going to be at this show, it's going to be tremendous. So we're very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, but this gives me an opportunity to be more one-on-one with the wrestling fans, as opposed to years ago when I was they were just able to see me perform in the ring. So the fans come out and we have I spend a little time, we do a little talk, and of course I like to bring up the stuff that happened a few years ago.
Sure. Now, speaking of that, I know you've been asked or you've answered a million questions about your matches with Ric Flair, but you know what? I'm curious to know about the prequel to this story. What led up to you guys starting your tremendous rivalry and story together? How did you guys get booked together? And was it George Scott of Jim Crockett Promotions? Was he the first booker or promoter to put you two guys together?
Yes, George Scott was a booker at the time for Crockett, and that was 1977. Can you believe that was 41 years ago?
Wow.
But it was actually Flair. He went to speak to Jim Crockett and George. He went to bat for me. I just come in the territory in around March of 77. And at that time, they had the main event guys were Wahoo McDaniels and Blackjack Mulligan and, a couple of Rufus R. Jones, who was very successful in the Carolinas. And, and all these guys wanted to work for Flair because he was knocking on the door to be the top heel for the company at the time. And he went to bat for me and said, "Hey, you got this new kid, Steamboat. I'd like to maybe try something with him." So he was the one that actually planted the seed. And I think I came in on March, and I think in around June is when we did our first angle on TV. So, and then God, for that first year that we were hooked up, every night I was going to school with him. He was taking me to school every night, man.
Well, when did you realize that there was such great in-ring chemistry between you and Flair?
Well, God, I don't know. Him with the blonde hair and me with the black hair, and I was always standing up for what was right, and he was always standing up for whether it was right or wrong. He just felt that whatever he did was okay. And back then when everybody was more in tune to your certified heel and babyface, good guy, bad guy type of thing, and especially the way he cut his promos, it made the in-ring presence a lot easier to work. I mean, but I was still young and learning, but throughout my younger years and growing up and involved in other sports, I played baseball and basketball. I ran track. I was a wrestler in high school, and all the coaches told me I was very coachable. And then when I went through Vern Gagne's school up in Minneapolis, I was the class after Flair, 2 years after Flair, and even there they said I was very coachable and I could pick things up. So I don't know if he said it was easy for him to teach me, but I caught on pretty quick on I always thought things out like after a match, and there was always a rhyme and a reason and a logic behind what we did in the ring. And after working with him, after a year or so, I found out myself as a babyface, try to work the heel, his style, as opposed to the heels trying to work the babyface's style. And that made me very I don't know what's the word, accommodating to all the heels that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times, Stephen, unbeknown to them, that I was sprinkling in some Ricky Steamboat isms throughout the match. So in some ways, I was getting my stuff in without, um, being so forceful about it when talking your matches out, or in the course of a match, things that were happening. And so, but I found out early on, I worked at his style, and then they started to realize this, and then after, we get into the match, they started accommodating me too. So it made things easy.
Well, that leads me straight into my next question: was how much did you two communicate in the ring, or did you just know what the other was going to do and just did very little talking?
Well, in the beginning, he was leading, and he was in my ear all the time. After we had worked with each other and got to know, certain things that he liked to do every night and things that I like to do, a lot of times we would put him in maybe different times of the match because, Stephen, we wrestle a lot of 1 hour matches, Broadways.
Sure.
So, and you really get to know the other guy when you start having a Broadway every night, and it would go on for a month, and what was also interesting back then, working in the Carolinas, like on a Monday night, we'd be in Greenville, South Carolina, and Tuesday night we'd be in Columbia, 80 or 90 miles apart. And a lot of the fans from Monday night would venture over to Columbia on Tuesday night. So every night we had to change our match. Just for those few fans, there might have been 50, there might have been 25, there might have been 100. But just for those fans, we had to change our match. But, at the end of the day, in your career, it made you a better worker because every night you had to keep coming up with some new stuff. And a lot of it was on the fly, to get back to your question. Most times we would go into the match knowing the finish. So, and if it was a Broadway, a 60-minuter, we'd say to each other, well, okay, I'll see you in the ring. We talk about nothing and go out there and wrestle for an hour.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Well, listen, I like to ask the chair shots to the Cranium fans to submit questions for my interviews, and I pick one to ask. So I feel like I have a great question from Larry Ashley in South Carolina. And Larry wants to know, how was it teaming and traveling with Jay Youngblood, and do you believe, as I do, that Jay is maybe one of the most underrated wrestlers of that or any era?
Traveling with him, we grew to be like brothers for each other. We were together for almost 5 years. And I will say that during that tag team era in my career was a lot of fun. We had a tremendous amount of fun. We had a good chemistry with each other. No egos involved. It didn't matter if they were going to get the heat on me, the heels, or the heat on Jay. And if the heat was on me, he'd make the comeback, and vice versa. We were just real big on trying to get the match over. And if during the match they stopped me with something big, well, that was the flow of the match, and we were just going to get the heat on me. It was never ever designed to which, okay, we're going to get the heat on Jay, then Ricky make the comeback. It was never designed that way. We sort of knew each other's roles, to which if they got the heat on me, he'd know what to do in the comeback, and if they got the heat on him, I'd know what to do in the comeback. And the heels worked well with each other, with us, because if it was a good stop spot, like I said, nothing was really planned out. But if during the match, if that was a real good stop spot on me, and let's just say if the heat was designed on Jay, well, we'd have to take that real good stop spot on me, then I'd have to fire up, and then we get Jay back in, and then they stop him. So, just sort of, and sometimes maybe the second time around, on trying to stop your partner, it wasn't nearly as good as, the first time. So we figured out if we got a good moment in there, and it didn't matter who they stopped, we're going to get the heat on that guy, and the other guy knew his role. Yes, very underrated. And I've always been known in my career to be a good salesman in the ring. But when I first started teaming up with Jay, and that was in the late 70s, standing on an apron watching him sell, my God, I wish I had a notebook because I would have been taking notes. But, then again, I was taking mental notes because I was just watching the way he would sell. And man, that Mescalero Indian would fire up on a comeback and had so much fire. I mean, he only weighed 190 pounds soaking wet,
Mm-hmm.
And God, he could sell his ass off and have a fire on the comeback, and that's why the fans loved him. And the two of us really enjoyed, the moments of time and the years that we spent together.
Yeah, you guys were a tremendous tag team. It was an absolute pleasure and enjoyment to watch you guys wrestle together in the ring. Now, I was very excited back in 2009 to see you get back in the ring again with Chris Jericho. Tell us about your match with Chris Jericho, first with the other legends at WrestleMania 25, and then your one-on-one with Jericho at Backlash that same year. Again, tremendous match between the two of you. How did you prepare for those matches, and how did you feel about those matches and being in the ring again on such a big stage?
Well, Chris Jericho was going on with the title of being like the legend killer.
Right.
And so that's how the WrestleMania 25, getting the three of us in the ring. At that time in my life, I was working as one of the trainers at the FCW school in Tampa. So I was there 5 days a week, and I was pretty hands-on at the time. I could get in the ring and have a 20-minute match with any of the young boys, and I felt that kind of leadership and being able to teach that way was more hands-on, was like the way I was brought up, coming up through the ranks, working with seasoned veterans. And so I was able to get in the ring and work with a lot of the guys. So I stayed in pretty much ring shape. And now getting back to WrestleMania 25, when we started talking about the match and with Chris and Snuka and Pipe, both Snuka and Pipe were pretty banged up, with their hips and their knees and so forth. And so Chris said, Ricky, you'll probably have to be about 70 or 80% of the match. And I was good with that. The more ring time for me, God, what a blessing. It was, like a resurgence for the Dragon.
Sure.
But unbeknown, WrestleMania was Sunday, WrestleMania 25. Monday, we're doing Monday Night Raw, and unbeknown to me, I was going to be one of the production guys sitting in the production meeting. They handed out the show, and next thing you know, I'm involved like in a 8-man tag, Monday Night Raw, and with John Cena and oh God, who were some of the other guys? Maybe one of the Hardys and Rey Mysterio,
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that was going to happen. Nobody told me. I found out the day of, And then on Tuesday, we're sitting in production and for SmackDown, going over the show. But before we started, Vince says, hand out the paperwork for the next pay-per-view, which is Backlash. So they handed out the card, and I'm looking at it, and then I see Ricky Steamboat versus Chris Jericho, one-on-one. And I didn't know anything about that. And I had my paper, and I looked up, and all the writers and Vince were looking at me to see my reaction. Of course, my mouth dropped, and I went, what? And they all looked at me, and they all started giggling and laughing, and Vince says, yeah, Chris wanted to work with you one-on-one, and watching you work in the ring, with Snuka and Pipe, he said, you old fart, you still can do it. So then I had the one-on-one with Chris, and then that went on to, we had an overseas tour, and I worked with Jericho every night overseas. We came back to the States, and we had a tour through the Carolinas, and I worked with Chris every night throughout the Carolinas. So that one WrestleMania 25 match, the handicap match, ended up being like a total of about, 15 or 17 matches.
Wow.
With Chris. And he, once again, he went to bat for me and said, yeah, Ricky can still do it, so I'd like to work one-on-one. And it just it snowballed. It just kept getting more and more time. It was a really, really happy period in my life to be, I had not worked live, although, like I told you, I've been in the ring working with the trainers at the school. But I was very conscious about my work. And I know a lot of the old timers or guys during my era, some of them were still trying, and maybe it's because they financially had to keep working, or they're doing independence, and I didn't want to, because I felt that I didn't want to embarrass myself. I wanted the fans to remember me as I was in the ring. So when WrestleMania 25 came up and it was a handicap, I said, and I was working in the ring at the school, so yeah, I can do this. Although it's been a ton of years since I've had a match, but that like I said, that went on to a handful of other matches, and all the guys saying, no, you're not embarrassing yourself, man. But I'll tell you this, Stephen, there are moments in the match to which I knew I was off a step, but it's just because of Mother Nature and age. You're not as quick as you used to be, or to get up and down, or as fast. But I knew it, but all the guys are telling me that they couldn't see through it.
No, again, getting ready to say the same thing. I could not tell it a bit. I thought you looked outstanding, and I was just blown away by it. I was like, wow, I cannot believe this. I mean, he has not missed a step, and it was just extreme. That's why I had to ask you the question, because what preparation went into that, because, again, you did a fantastic job of that. Of course, another opponent that you will forever be linked to is, of course, Randy Savage, and it's widely known that Randy scripted every single movement of that match with you at WrestleMania 3 and wanted to follow that script to a T. How long did it take to script and memorize that match? And honestly, how wound up or anxious was Randy and yourself leading up to that match?
Well, we had to, he was a stickler on things, but then again, he was open-minded to any suggestions that I had. And there was a couple of key things that basically the story of the match, and he said, I think you should come after my throat, because he came off the top rope with the bell on my throat, and we should, and I kind of said, well, I don't, Randy, to be honest with you, I think everybody would think that. I would not mind if we had a moment in the match to which I got your throat, and that's, I hiked him up in the air, and I had his in a chokehold up, holding him up in the air for maybe 4 or 5 seconds or something like that. But
right.
I said I'd like to make it a championship match, for the Intercontinental belt, and I felt that in my promos or something that the best way I could hurt this man is take his championship after he tried to put me out of the business, and everybody was wondering if I was going to be able to make a comeback or if I even was going to be able to wrestle, so, to beat you for the championship would speak volumes over, just trying to tell the story of me continually going after his throat. Let's make it a championship match. We also did not have the privilege of being able to work with each other leading up to WrestleMania 3. A lot of the main eventers would have some tune-up matches with their opponent and, try some things in the ring and set some things up and feel it out. And then you'd be on the big pay-per-view. We didn't have that luxury. Vince wanted me to make my debut at WrestleMania 3, so we had not even touched each other up until that night. So that's when the idea said, well, maybe we ought to start putting some stuff together. and I'm thinking about a month out from the show. And, I honestly thought we were just going to have a couple of bullets, a couple of this and a couple of that. And if they happen to come up during the match, fine. But we started out from the very beginning. And you won't believe this, but step one was lockup.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Randy, I don't have to write that down. Oh, yeah, Dragon, write it down. Step one, lockup. So, and then from then, we finally, when we got the match all put together, I don't know, 150 some steps, we started quizzing each other, to which I'd go to, okay, step number 65 is this, and this. Tell me the rest of the match. And he'd go, okay, 66 is 67, and we'd go through the whole, then he'd quiz me, and we'd go back and forth. But to make it a championship match was false finishes, because the story was that, he's trying to keep his belt, and I'm trying to win it from him. And we ended up having 21 false finishes in a match that went a little bit less than 17 minutes, and that's what made the match.
Absolutely.
But I'll tell you, Stephen, that I was so stressed out, because in your mind you're going through all the steps, the day of the show, an hour before the show, 5 minutes before you're on, you're going through the match in your head and trying to remember 21 false finishes in the sequence. I was just stressed out. Just didn't show it. I was good to everybody. And, hey, Ricky, how you doing? I'm good. You ready for your match? Oh, yeah,
Well, I can imagine, which, of course, leads to that question. That's why I wanted to ask you. We knew it was scripted out that way, but, how wound up were you guys? You had to be. I mean, when you just said it yourself, you have that many false finishes, and you're trying to remember all that, remember the sequence of the matches. I'm sure it was very anxious yet exciting time, so that's a tremendous story to hear.
After the 1, 2, 3, I laid there for a moment. I looked up at we're in the Silverdome. I looked up at the Silverdome at the roof. And I was looking up, at God. And I laid there for a moment, and I looked up at him, and the words that came out of my mouth was, "It is done."
Wow.
It is done.
Yeah, that's a tremendous story.
When we were coming through and there were times in that match, and I don't think anybody picked up on it, but there are times in that match when Savage would go, What's next, Ricky? What false finish? And I would say, okay, we got to do this. Okay, I got it. And then 2 or 3 minutes in the match, hey, Randy, which one's next? We're number 17 now or something, And they go, oh, Dragon, do this. I said, okay, I got it. So we were helping each other out throughout that match on the sequences that we're following, God.
That's unbelievable. Well, Ricky, this is the Cranium Shot portion of my interview. I'm going to say a name, and you tell me the first word or words that pop into your cranium. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, Harley Race.
A machine.
Jake the Snake Roberts.
Psychologist.
The WWE Network.
That's hard because you just want one word. Thankful.
Wahoo McDaniel.
Tough.
All right, this is going to be a blast from your past here. Legendary referee Tommy Young.
Best.
Finally, George the Animal Steele.
Humbling. And let me back it up with a story. I say the word humbling. He had a little angle going with Randy's wife.
Yes, Miss Elizabeth.
Miss Elizabeth had a little angle going on. He had this animal attraction type of thing.
Right.
And wanted to get him involved in the match, but usually, he was standing out as sort of like my second, and usually, they moments like when you have somebody out there, a manager or your second, they want to get involved with, maybe try to trip you up and grab your ankle and distract you and that kind of stuff. And Randy and I started talking about what to do with George, and we both came up with, I said, I'd like to have a couple of key moments for George, but I'd like those moments to be game changers. So if you can recall the match, I think there was the time then when Randy grabbed the bell and he was getting ready to climb the rope to come off with it like he did on TV with me. The referee had been knocked down. Him and I had a double collide. And George got up there and grabbed the bell out of his hand and started to leave. And Randy jumped down and I think booted him in the head and got the bell back. And then as he got to the top, George recovered and pushed him. There was a moment that wasn't talked about or scripted to which Randy nailed me with something, and I slid along the top of the table and ended up over the railing and into the first row. And George came over and helped me over and hoisted me up and got me back in the ring. And that was just a moment that he took upon himself. But we just wanted to have a couple of key moments with George, and I wanted to make him important and a game changer, in which those moments were. And when we told George, he was really, really, just wanted me and Randy to have the match, and any involvement, he was happy to do. And when we told him the psychology behind it, he really liked it. Instead of just going out there and doing little picky-anny things in the course of the match, just have a couple of really good moments that would change the match, and he thought that was great, and that's what I meant by humbling, is that instead of wanting to do more, or you're out there in front of 93,000 and all that, he was very humbling.
Well, speaking of humbling, it's been extremely humbling for you to spend time with me today and to hear these stories from you. Again, I cannot thank you enough. It's been so wonderful to sit here and listen to all these stories that you're telling. And I just want to remind the fans as well that you can see Ricky the Dragon Steamboat at Universal Championship Wrestling's Memorial Mayhem on Saturday, May the 26th in Marietta, Georgia at the historic Cobb County Civic Center. You do not want to miss this show. If you want to find out how Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is going to be involved in this show, go out and buy a ticket. Do not miss this show. For more information on how to purchase a ticket, visit the website at ucwtv.com. Again, that is ucwtv.com for Universal Championship Wrestling. Again,
Steven,
yes, sir.
Give a friendly mention. There's a number of some of the other guys are going to be on the show too, correct?
Absolutely. We have Carlito's going to be on the show. We also have another WWE Hall of Famer, Teddy Long, will be there. Buff Bagwell will be on the show. The Hurricane will be on the show. So a lot of tremendous talent. Lodi, Scotty Matthews. So a lot of great guys will be on the show. You do not want to miss it.
Yeah, and then some of the names you mentioned I have not seen in a number of years. It'll just be like an old family reunion type thing. It'd be great to see them guys and watch them work that night. It'll be fun.
Absolutely. Of course, the Universal Heavyweight Champion Johnny Swinger will be there defending his title. So again, terrific show to be at. Ricky, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your day to do this interview with me. Thank you so very much.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a blast doing it.
Thank you.